What is going on today? So I'm switching it up a little bit. I'm gonna be trying to do a reaction videos on some certain real estate related videos that I kind of either find a little bit on the edge of something I agree with or just have kind of conflicting thoughts of what I usually say. So in this video, I'm gonna be watching some Dave Ramsey right here. And of course, if you ever heard about anything about Dave Ramsey, you know that one of his huge things is that you invest, and when you invest or buy a house or any type of thing, you always pay cash, never put anything on credit. Even just regular purchases, he's always cash and debit cards and that type of stuff. No credit. He does not like credit, which I don't necessarily disagree with in some certain aspects, but when people are more responsible with money, I think there are good cases for credit and it will help you kind of progress faster if you are to use other people's money to get a little bit ahead. So let's dive into this video and we'll do some reacting.
Comfortable with. Um, Mine has resulted in being much heavier real estate
Yeah,
than
because you
mutual
love real
funds.
estate.
I love real estate, but the other thing that happened was 2008.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
bought like $200 million worth of real estate in
Wow.
2008 for about $20 million,
Wow.
about 10 cents on the dollar.
Yeah.
Real estate was it was on sale, it was on fire sale.
Yeah.
So consequently, net worth is cited just from the fact that I stole that stuff,
Right, right, right.
and that changed it.
Just quickly, that is crazy. Getting real estate that appreciated that much, 10 cents on the dollar, 20 million worth 200 million today. Good for him. Like that's just wild.
But so even more so than just investing steadily
Sure.
into it. I just caught that wave, the best wave of my entire 60-year life,
Yeah.
in terms of the market being way down, and it was really good for people who had money
Right.
to buy stuff while it was way down. And so, and then we've developed these.
That's a really good point right there. Is people who were able to take advantage when prices were down are put in such different positions. I heard a thing the other day where it's basically like people spend summertime money during winter time. So when economic times aren't great, they're still spending like they are great, where that should be where you're really trying to save. So when that winter time comes, you can actually take advantage of it because you have the money to go out there and invest like so many people did in '08, where the other half of it, you're just hearing about all the people losing stuff and all the bad sides about it.
These properties
Right.
that our offices are in, and they're very expensive too. So I've got those two things that's caused mine to be very heavy real estate. You certainly would not want to do that if you don't want to deal with tenants.
Yeah.
And in my case, we've got Rachel's husband, Winston, as you know, runs all of our property management and our development and all that. And so I'm blessed that I have Winston and a company.
So this is another thing. Tenants, yes, they can be intimidating when you're first jumping into real estate investing. For me, I got started at 20 years old. That's being a kid basically. Like being a kid and being in charge. Like my first tenant that I had downstairs when I was living upstairs, she had to be mid 60s. Like it's just kind of weird getting put in those positions, but you got to do what you got to do and just kind of make sure you have your processes to follow and just stick to that. Even if, yes, sometimes it stinks. Sometimes you don't want to be the bad guy, but you're just following the rules, because if you get a little bit lenient, people take that way too far and push you all the way down the hill. So make sure you stick with your rules and just set them before you even buy an investment property, so that when you do invest, you know how to handle the stuff, or at least in your head, you know how to handle it. Then it's just up to like willpower and determination to actually stick to those plans.
That
A
manages
real
all that.
estate company that does that for me day to day. So that takes a lot out of me personally.
And of course, like you just mentioned, property management. So if you're in a situation where maybe you just have a bunch of money you need to invest and you don't want to deal with a headache, just make sure you're working in the cost of property management into your numbers while running them for investment properties. Make sure it makes sense with the property management costs, because heck, if you can put your money into it, hire a property manager, take everything off your plate and just reap some of the rewards, well, then that might be a great position for you.
I'm not over trying to make sure the heat and air is getting fixed on a house or
Yeah.
something. I'm not, because I got to run this place. And so, but anyway, all that to say that when you're first starting, you can change the ratio back and
Yeah.
forth. You could get into real estate and go, I don't like it.
Yeah.
and move back towards mutual funds or vice versa.
Let's talk about this real estate thing. So I'm thinking there's probably people listening right now that they may be in that spot where they are ready. They've maxed everything out and they want to get into real estate, but they've never done it before other than their own home that they've paid off. And they're looking to save up and pay cash for their first piece of real estate. Do you have any advice for them? Like, hey, you've got to do this. You're just getting into it. Here's what you need to know from someone who's done it.
Um,
Things to look out for, that type of thing.
yeah, the cheaper the property, the better the rate of return typically is,
Mhm.
and the higher the hassle factor.
Interesting.
So you can buy lower income stuff
Yep.
in that end of town that that your ROI, your math on it is really sweet.
Okay.
But your ROI on your time is
Your
not.
headache.
It's quite the
This is a great point he brings up. And again, this is kind of where I don't really agree with not going into debt in some good cases. If you go into debt and it makes sense money-wise, yes, plan for the worst and make sure you can still afford it. If it was a completely vacant property or 50% vacancy, whatever the rate may be, just make sure you can keep affording it. But what he's saying here is, especially when you're going to buy all cash, you have to wait a long time to save that cash, most likely. So if you're going to buy a cheaper property, well, there's a reason it's cheaper. It's because it's not in that great of part of town. Like, you're going to be dealing with way more of a headache because the lower quality part of town you invest in, the lower quality tenant you're going to get, and the more headaches you get. And just really everything gets worse when you go into that. So make sure you're looking at the right type of investments. Look at what class you like. A lot of people like the B, C class places because A class is not good during a recession. And then anything below C is basically a headache. And just make sure you're like looking at that stuff. But the numbers are always going to look great on these properties. But again, they're going to come with a lot of headache and a lot of your time getting used managing them.
the opposite.
Yeah.
So on the other end of the spectrum is like credit commercial real estate. So if you've got a household name as a tenant, or let's even go further, the post office
Yep.
wants you to do a build a suit on a commercial. So the post office is your tenant, the federal government.
Right.
Well, that's kind of like automatic.
Right.
You're going to get your check, right? You don't have to worry about the collections. And it's a 50-year lease. It's kind of just becomes,
Great.
you just go to the mailbox, open it, there it is, and there's your money. But your rate of return is way down on
Gotcha.
that. They don't give much of a cap rate, much of a rate of return on that. So like a Walgreens, a lot of Walgreens doesn't buy those properties. They do build to suits, and they get investors. And
this is a side of commercial investing more. And it's where, of course, you're going to have a little bit lower. But like he said, if you have a contract with a post office, you know you're getting that money no matter what. No matter if it's a recession, no matter if times are great, you're going to get that paycheck. But again, it's going to be a lower return than other types of investments like rental properties and multifamilies.
But Walgreens is a credit tenant, meaning that they're you can actually take that contract to the bank and borrow against it. It's that strong.
Wow.
And so, but on that end of the spectrum, that's the least down a little, but it's just a nice single family home.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to make as much on that, but you also are dealing with a little different class of person typically, and how you're going to interact with them, and the hassle factor goes down. So that's thing one. Thing two would be your money is made at the buy.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens on almost all of us, including me, on our very first investment property, about being invested at a discount. You should never pay appraisal, ever.
Okay.
And in a market like today, that sidelines you.
Right.
It's very difficult.
You don't have a chance.
See, and this is a hard part because people do want to buy everything at a discount, which of course makes sense because you want to get a good deal. Like he just said, you make money on the buy. Not enough people listen to this. A lot of people will be like, well, I'm going to be able to purchase it and we'll break even. We're not going to really cash flow, but we'll break even. Then appreciation will do its thing. You're just gambling with a lot of money at that point. Like there's, yes, over the point of history, yes, real estate has always went up in price, but you don't have a safe exit strategy. And what if you lose money on rent because either they didn't pay or it's vacant? You're not breaking even anymore. You're losing money. So just make sure you're like actually planning for these and you don't go too over your head in debt where you get the red flags and then you can't pay and then it gets the whole thing and it gets taken away from you. You don't want to go down that road. So make sure you are making a good purchase and don't get too excited, because he makes a great point about that. Either I feel like some people are in the case where they get way too excited and they just jump on any opportunity they see and like, oh, it'll make sense, I'll make it work. Or you get the people who have analysis paralysis where they're like, yeah, the numbers clearly show it cash flows $500 a month, but what if? But what if? But what if you keep asking what ifs, you're never going to pull the trigger and actually make the purchase. But again, if you're too excited and you pull the trigger too quick, then you could make a mistake. So it's just keeping a level head and really trusting your numbers.
It's
Very difficult to find deals today. It's quite the opposite of 2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but if you buy a $200,000 property for $200,000, it's a little tougher to get your ROI on it. But if you can pick up that $200,000 property for 150, now you got that built-in 50 to start with, and you're gonna always not only have the appreciation, but then your rents on your rate of return on that 150, because your rents aren't based on what you paid for it; they're based on what it's worth.
Right. That makes sense.
$200,000 house rents for the same, whether you got a mortgage on it, whether you don't, whether you paid $250 for it, or whether you paid $150 for it. It still rents for the same amount.
Yeah.
And so your rate of return on your rents and everything is changed by the monies made at the buy, which requires this most difficult thing in real estate, and that's patience.
Yeah.
And you're just shopping and shopping, and you're not emotionally involved, and you're looking for a deal. We're not trying to hurt anybody's feelings. We're not trying to rip anybody off. But I just don't put money in stuff unless it's a deal.
Yeah.
And
that's a huge thing he mentioned, emotionally involved. Try to remove the emotions from it, which is super hard. But like he's saying, you make money on the buy. That's where you have to be really good at actually knowing what you're looking at and being confident and being patient, because that's one of the hardest things. I was in a position to buy really all of last year, and I waited until about this time last year where I actually found a deal that worked, where it was sitting on the market for a while, even in that crazy market, and I was able to get a deal that worked for me because of the patience. It's going to be hard every time holding on to that patience, because you just want to keep getting more and more properties, bringing in more and more rental income. I get it, but you just have to be patient, because time will do its thing, especially in real estate.
I own
because that's why you're doing it, is to make money. That's why you're doing it. If you remember that, that's going to help you resist that temptation to overpay.
This is a mathematical transaction,
right?
Nothing else,
right?
But there's something about real estate that's just very emotional, for all of us. And
even if you're not going to live there,
the first house I flipped, I made $800 on.
Wow.
Translation: I almost lost money.
Yeah.
If I hadn't crawled around under the stinking house and put the pipes in myself, I would have lost money. So I didn't even make my labor back.
Yeah.
I probably made $1 an hour on working on the stupid thing, right? On my labor, and didn't make a dime as an investor. So that's unwise. But I was all excited. I had to buy it, and I thought it was a HUD foreclosure. I thought, because it said foreclosure on it, it meant deal. I didn't think that. But something in my emotions said,
justified
it's a foreclosure.
It justified it for you.
It's got to have some, I got to work on it. It needs some fixing up. It's a fixer-upper. But I paid stinking, obviously, full price for it almost. I took 9 days to sell the stinking thing. It didn't sell super fast. And I had to work on it. And I barely got out, even with my own labor in it, for free.
Yeah.
So that's all about, I was excited to be a real estate investor. Now, granted.
So that's the end of the video. And he's brought up some great points throughout this video, and just kind of shows you basically like remove your emotions from a lot of real estate investing, because if you bring your emotions into it, chances are there's going to be mistakes that you make. It's just a thing where it's tough to do, but he says like, oh, I wonder why it brings it in. It's just because it's so much money. Like, for most people to earn enough money to put a down payment, let alone pay cash for a place, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of hard work that went into saving that. So to put that into an investment of any sort, you want to be sure of it. And of course, emotions are going to come up at some point, but make sure you try to keep them in check as much as you can, and really just try your hardest to really stick to your numbers, because one thing I personally love about real estate investing is numbers do not lie. So if you know your numbers, you know your area you're investing in, and you actually run your numbers correctly without lying to yourself, because the only way numbers are going to lie is if you put them in wrong and you lie before actually getting to the true numbers. So I hope this video was kind of cool. I had fun doing it, a little bit different for me, a different style of recording. And let me know what you think in the comments below. What's your take on Dave Ramsey? Are you someone that believes in being debt free. Of course, it's super nice to be debt free, but if you're able to use leverage to build your passive income more and more, you're going to be able to basically grow your portfolio way faster if you had to keep saving $200, $300, $400,000 each time you wanted to buy a couple of units. So let me know your thoughts, and I will catch you next time.